Good evening. Welcome to Earth to the Other Side. My name's John. I'm your host, and tonight I'm speaking with Tina Rous, who had a near-death experience back in 2010. She was found actually frozen solid, and it's just fascinating. Tina, welcome to the show.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I'm just going to do what I always do and hand the floor right over to you. Take us
Oh,
back.
what am I going to do with the floor? What do I do? Back in 2010, we had a blizzard. We had feet of snow in February. And I was out in the snow screaming at God, source, creator, whatever you want to call this energy. It's very pure. It's pure love. It's unconditional love. It's creation energy. And I think it's too intense to just put one name, one label on it. And I think that's why we all identify with it in different ways. But I was out here screaming at it and with all that was in me, like everything that was in me, whole body screaming. And to understand this, you would need to know that my husband at that time had been murdered in July, a few months prior, 6, 7 months prior to this. And I really wasn't handling it very well at all. And what I wanted was a moment with him. I didn't get to say goodbye. I didn't get to, and even if it was just a moment and screaming, begging, pleading, crying. And that's the last I remember about the earthly part. um, my daughter, where she was, saw something shoot across the sky over where I live. And I don't have the drawing now. That was a long time ago. But what she drew, it didn't look like the round orbs we see. And it didn't really look like a flash, a shooting star, or a comet, but it kind of did look like a shooting star comet kind of thing with color. It was shooting over here. So she told her husband at that time, you know, something's happened to mom. Look at the sky. Look what's shooting across the sky over top where she lives. We've got to get there. And how they got down in here, I don't know. Because when they called an ambulance, the ambulance couldn't get down in here. I don't know how they got down in here. But they got down in here and they came inside, and I was not to be found anywhere. And it's kind of embarrassing to admit this, but in February, we still had Halloween decorations outside laying in the snow. They had been snowed on and whatnot. I don't know why they were still there. But while she's inside, the friend they had with them that, just jumped in the car and rode with them kept coming inside and saying, I think your mom's outside. And no, that's Halloween decorations. And this went on for a while until he finally picked me up, brought me inside and said, no, I think this is your mom. And put me down on the couch. And I was frozen solid all the way through. We don't know how long I laid there. I don't know how long a person lays there and before they freeze to death. And I don't know how long it takes a human body to freeze solid all the way through. But that's the condition they found me in. And they called an ambulance. An ambulance couldn't get down in here, so they had to park up wherever and bring the stretcher down, walk down. My clothes had frozen to my body. Everything was frozen. Kind of the way it was described to me was like when you put roast beef or something, you wrap it with saran wrap and put it in the freezer, and it sits there for however long. So I was transported to a local hospital, and I'm told in the medical records I pulled, because a lot of this I had trouble really believing it. So I pulled the medical records, because when people are going through stuff, they remember their own way. So I pulled the medical records and it's all there. But there was some kind of gradual thawing process, and you're wrapped in this bubble wrap kind of stuff. And I don't know if you're fully submerged, partially submerged, but it's a gradual process. So they thawed my body out, but they had to replace all my blood because it had started breaking down. It was what's called coagulated. So they had to flush out all my blood, put on new blood in. I've seen people talk about NDEs. I consider mine a resurrection, not an NDE,
Mm-hmm.
because I was dead. I was
Sounds like it.
decomposed. I was my body was decomposing. Rigor mortis did set in, and I was gone 24 plus, who knows how many hours. So I don't consider this a near death thing. Where I was very much alive, and I rose, and my body rose. I consider it a resurrection thing, a hopeful, happy thing. An NDE is when people, their heart might stop and then they come back. They're gone, however. But no, my body was decomposing. It was when people talk about NDEs, I hear about tunnels and a light at the end of a tunnel. I hear about a lot of things, and that's not at all what I experienced. Not at all. What I experienced was I was with my second husband briefly. I say briefly, but I don't know how long it really was. Communication, there is communication. It's not telepathic. And that wasn't my experience. People say that, but that may have been their experience, but it wasn't mine. You feel it. It's very clear. You feel it. And that was a beautiful thing. And then there was this moment where a total merge with source, total merge with that energy. I became that energy. Totally became merged with it, totally became one with it, totally became that energy. And what's communicated with that energy is also felt, but it's extreme. It's so extreme. I don't often say this, because to say this, someone might try to do this, but if you cause it to happen, this isn't, you may not go where you want to go. But that emotions we feel here, in my experience, at their most extreme, is just enough to identify what's being communicated. So you don't flip out when you feel it, because it's so intense, like love. And that's what I felt. Intense, such intense love, that had I not felt love in an extreme way here, it may have overwhelmed me to the point where it would have just freaked me out. It's so intense. It's just, I merged with that, and when merged with that source energy, and it's just unconditional love. I mean, it's just all it was. Total, full, unconditional love. A love like we don't experience here. It's just so extreme. And then I felt an incredible sense of dread. Such an extreme. And that was because I knew what that meant. I was coming back. And I didn't want to come back. I really didn't. But I was coming back. And I can remember, and that's when I opened my eyes and I'm like, what's going on here? And then, it was hell for a while, because I really didn't want to be here. I didn't want to leave there. But the communication was clearly felt. Then I knew I was coming back. I remember feeling, questioning about purpose. We talk purpose, we talk mission. I remember feeling the communication was that my purpose was to be unconditional love, which makes the merge make sense. But at the same time, here I am merged with source. It's being communicated to me what my purpose is. And say what you want to about being disrespectful to that energy, but I was like, no, that's stupid. That's just who I am. That's not some big mission. That's not some big intense purpose. That's not something to achieve or do. That's just who I am. It's what I do. It's who I am. And it gets communicated to me very clearly. That's who you are, because you're designed according to purpose. You're not going to eat with your eyeball, and it's going to come quite natural. You are created according to your purpose. And then whomp, all that impending doom and back here.
You describe like what a lot of other NDEers describe in terms of the unconditional love. I mean, that's definitely a factor. Like in terms of where you were, like my initial question is, it's something that you can't really describe. It was more of a feeling, or did you feel like you were in an
it, but you might
actual
not believe
space? Oh, sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't have believed it if I wasn't there. The
You
feeling is the
tell.
communication. The merge, I mean, you're merged in absolute light. Well, I was, and I became light, just pure light, and was merged with this light. It was a place that was so vast. I couldn't begin to say how vast it was. It was like infinitely vast. It was beautiful, beautiful. I would like to say the flowers are made of crystals and things like this, only because that's the closest way to describe it in a human context that it could be humanly understood. It's very difficult to describe. It's gorgeous.
Super high definition.
Like we have air here, but what you have there are like vibrations, frequencies, and it's all peace, love, and as
I
cliche
think
as
we
that
have the
sounds, that's
same
what it
thing here, though. I
is.
think I think we have the vibrational
We
aspect.
do,
It's
we
just it's
do. I tap
swamped.
into it
It's
all the time,
yeah,
but it's so extreme there. That's because that's all there is there.
mhm,
There is none of the other garbage,
exactly. Yeah.
and it's so intense, and it's so beautiful, and we are known there as we are known here in terms of, if you want to connect, if you want to connect with the loved one, all you got to do is feel into it. I saw my grandfather. He was young, he was healthy, he was happy, and he knew me. You know, my husband who had been murdered. We were sitting together, but it's I don't know quite how to describe it. Um, Everything's alive. The water is alive. Everything's around you is alive. But you're not in human form, so you don't really need that. You know, yet it's beautiful and so enjoyable. And I guess some people might call that heaven. I don't know what I'd call it, but it was just wonderful.
How would you describe recognizing the energies that you encountered?
Recognizing the energies, you
Well, what I
feel
mean
them,
is if
and
you're
then
not, you're not in body form, right? As you said, you're not in physical
no,
form.
well, you become energy yourself,
Mm.
and it may or may not be different for different people. But when I did a full complete merge with source, I was light. And when I when I would feel into someone and I would see them, they, I would see them visually. I mean, they were there the way I knew them on earth, in a very real way. But the communication was through the heart. It wasn't with words or telepathy. And it was all love. It was all good. It was all good. No memory of, like, I had no idea what was going on back here. I have no memory of any accident or any kind of anything. Um, they never did figure out a cause of death. They never did figure out what happened to me. Um, Months later, I was at my primary care physician, doctor that I'd been doctoring with since I was a child. And I was sitting there. I had these little tiny heels on my boots, little tiny spiky heels, because I worked mental health. And we had casual dressy. I didn't really have clothes to be out there doing that. And my husband had always taken care of that. And I was out there in those, and we're sitting here talking to my doctor, and I crossed my legs, and he's like, "Were you wearing those?" I'm like, "Yeah." He said, "Haven't you lived here all your life? Don't we know better than to go outside in the snow?" I was like, "In those?" He said, "We're going to say you slipped and fell and hit your head, because we need to conclude this." I'm like, "Yeah, okay, that works. I know I know what happened. So who cares? If you need that for your record, fine." Yeah, I do
Yeah,
think when we tap into that energy of creator, God, source, the universe, if we are with our entire being, all the energy that's in us, making a connection with that, we're heard. And I know that's what happened. I was heard.
I
And I did
agree.
use the words, even if it's only for a brief moment. So whatever.
I fully agree with you on that. Definitely. 100%. and the fully emerge with source. I mean,
It's electrifying yet calming at the same time. I became light, but it wasn't like solid light, like the light in a light bulb or like looking at the sun. It was like the particles dancing, and you're just fully merged in.
yeah,
This was in 2010. That's what, 14 years ago. And I
right.
have yet to describe it in a way that is truly accurate. It's very difficult to put into human context.
But you feel like the memory is there just as clear as it was yesterday, or I mean, when it happened?
Oh yeah. Um, I slip in and out very easily.
What do you mean
I'm
by
not
that?
fully here, but
Okay, like
I'm not fully there.
half here, half there kind of thing?
Yeah, or sometimes it's 90-10 or whatever. I visit, and I say this, but until you're around it, it may be difficult to grasp. I visited a friend in Florida back in October, a really good friend, and we're at her place, and I cannot tell you how many she does. I forget what her title is, but she's in reserves, med corps or something or another. She goes in when there's disasters, does all the medical. And there'd be times she'd grab me and she'd say, "Feel your arm, feel your arm." I'm like, "What?" She's like, "It's dead. You're a corpse." I'm like, things I don't notice because I'm not in the medical field. And she'd be like, "Well, you're a rigor mortis survivor, blah 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 blah," and she'd be different thing. And there'd be times we'd be talking, and she'd be like, "I don't know where you were, but we just had a full conversation and you weren't here." I'm like, "Well, I knew where I was." Yeah. And so we'd talk about that. But sometimes I'm in both at the same time. Sometimes I slip in and out. I channel very easily because that,
Yeah, yeah, I was gonna ask you about that,
yeah.
for sure. But I'm just still curious, like, because you mentioned, of course, rigor mortis survivor. Like, I mean, who survives that? I'm sure there must be a very low statistic on that. But my I'm curious as to like when and how did they decide, okay, well, this person might survive. Like, I don't get, like, I'm just not
They
understanding.
didn't. They
Yeah.
didn't. They had me on a stretcher, sheet over my head, ready, waiting to be taken to the morgue.
So they did eventually then give up, basically. They gave up on it.
Oh
And,
yeah.
wow, it's
They
amazing.
had my body was on a stretcher, fully covered with a sheet, in the hallway, waiting to go to the morgue.
What was the
They had
reaction like when did you like, I know you may not have had, maybe you didn't have any conversation with the doctors and stuff, but did you see them again? Any of these people that were treating you or saw you initially coming
Yeah,
into the
because I wanted to
hospital?
leave and they weren't letting me leave, and they had to explain this whole process, this rigor mortis stuff to me,
Mhm.
and the frostbite stuff. And so yeah, we had some discussions. But my daughter, they had gathered my things up. They're like, "Here, get your mom's things," and blah blah blah. And she was ready to take my stuff home. And there she walks by. I don't know if she's saying her goodbyes or what she's doing, but I came back. And she's like, "No, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait."
That's incredible. And it didn't get on like the 6 o'clock news or anything at the time?
No, I'm not really into that. They
No.
have the house
Mm.
swamped with reporters. We were going through enough.
Oh yeah, no kidding, no doubt.
I didn't, but I did suffer long term effects. I didn't, but I did. I mean, I'm fine. I am very susceptible to frostbite, but that's true of anyone who's ever had it. Uh, there was some permanent damage to the part of the brain that regulates body temperature. So I won't know if I'm too hot or too cold. Um, so that makes me very susceptible to things like hypothermia, heat stroke, because I don't know. That was the only thing that really, the only damage that was done. I'm told that was, had to do with being frozen so long, and then the thawing process, and then when the body starts decomposition, is really gory the way they explain it, but then all that ever
Oh
came
yeah.
out of my mouth is, "Why am I here? I don't want to be here, and
Mm.
my mission is bullshit. My purpose is it's easy. I mean, so there's really no reason for me to be here. I want to be there." And I was not nice to be here.
But you say that lasted about a year, right?
That's what I would say. My daughter might say longer. Because even though after about a year I got up and I started doing things and getting it, I still wasn't really happy. I was severely depressed. I was treated for depression.
Yeah.
They called it complicated grief, and um, depression with psychosis or something. Because when I would slip out, I mean, I would be talking to people that I would be walking around saying "excuse me" to people nobody could see, things like this. So they would call that psychosis. But
Right.
I mean, truly, I wasn't here. I would slip away. My daughter understood what was going on. This took a few years to work through. It took me a long time to get to where I was actually appreciating those around me. Appreciating the sunrise, appreciating the plants, and really getting back into enjoying being here. And I never really made a complete disconnect, and I don't want to.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much, Tina, for sharing your story. It was
Oh,
absolutely
thank you.
wonderful. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
very much.
You're
Blessings to
welcome.
you.
Nice meeting you.
You too. Wonderful meeting you.